Hi everybody, and welcome to my video today. I'm going to do a video based on UX roles today. And the reason why I've gone on to this subject today is because recently I've been, I suppose, thinking about roles that I'll be interested in going forward with UX. Even though I've just started a role as a starting point, I wanted to know what direction I want to go in, what interests I've got, and kind of define key roles that interest myself through not just my experience, but then also from outside of work. So without ado, I will start with talking about roles. So obviously the first one within UX, if you go on like Google or go onto job searches, you're finding certain roles. And the first ones if you type in UX would be UX designer. So UX designer is basically takes a start from concept from start to finish, helps, I suppose the job role itself would help define meet with stakeholders to find what key research questions are, what the key problems are, where is the problem itself in terms of looking at the funnel itself. So is it looking at acquisition? Is it looking at retention? Is it looking at engagement? Yeah, it's just looking at all that funnel in terms of understanding where the key problems are and what the values are going forward. You also should understand a bit more about the short-term goals and the long-term goals. So, for example, it might be about, oh, I want to increase revenue of the company by 20% within the next year due to several reasons. And this might be down to, okay, then how can we help revenue with this? But your main job role, I shouldn't divert on that one. Your main job role is not to focus on the revenue itself, it's more to focus on usability and user metrics in terms of how you can improve going forward. So that's that. It's also looking at doing some research and interviews. I would say it's not just about user interviews itself, but user interviews is good to get a bit basics, understanding what key problems are, what key three to five tasks users are trying to complete when using your product. Understanding a bit more about the context itself, what's happening when users are using a product. Are they at work? Have they got several things going on their head? Are they in a busy environment? Just getting a key grip in terms of understanding what key problems are. And when you do user research, you're probably going to find you can get to that 3 or 4, in fact, not just 4, okay? You probably get loads of information from users in terms of understanding what key problems they're facing. So, for example, I struggle to find where I am within the system, or I need to know where to find this documentation. And it's all about gathering those key fields and doing like an affinity map into finding key categories of where you think the problems are. So that moves on to like doing brainstorming and doing workshop facilitation to understand a bit more about what the key problems are going forward. And define a bit more about how the problem relates back to the initial research question that your stakeholders are looking for. And then define a bit more in terms of, okay, then what is going to be the best solution with the least effort? Because it's not just the most amazing idea possible. It's all about understanding how your problem can integrate into the larger organization. And it's not just about your time being fixed, but you also make sure that you arrange it with the engineering, DevOps, or whatever channels within the business itself, make sure that it integrates with them so it's easier on their time and as well as easier on your time. So you might draw on like some user journey maps as well to find where how your problem can fix within the map itself, how can it ease the user. Again, using the user persona to finding a bit more about who you're aiming at, what kind of motivations they have. I wouldn't put in demographic information if it's not relevant. A lot of user personas seem to have like, oh, this person is a mum, they like Nike, they like this program. It's not necessary if it's not related to the user, because you're making an assumption up that's not true. Whereas if you've got key defined data, in terms of, they might like Nike if they're a runner, but if it's a mum wanting to know more about breastfeeding milk, I don't know why I came up with that analogy, it's a bit random, but it's relevant. Make sure when you create a user persona, make sure it's relevant and understand what kind of 3 key tasks they're going for and what kind of problems have you identified during the user research problem, and understand how your solution can meet to help ease those problems and also help them to ease with the task they're trying to complete. Within the task complete, you can actually find a bit more in terms of understanding where they are within the process and how that can help define metrics. Now, you may have metrics at the start of the process, but you may have it at this stage. And the reason why I say it might have at this stage, because somebody might say, oh, I want to improve. They might not, stakeholders normally don't know what they want defined. They might have a broad area, but not specifically defining or having any measurement at all to understand what they want improving. So you may be like, okay, then, so we want to look at understanding how we can prevent errors, because this errors are the main cause and problem that are causing our users to not use this product, and it's because of this during this process. Then you can sort of define and drill down what kind of metrics you're going to use per one. And you kind of, if you go through several of these iterations, you'll probably find the same metrics we used time and time again. So for example, error prevention, it might be, when does a user pop out of the process in terms of exit rates? It might be doing like usability tests and actually, or even tree mapping and understanding a bit more about where the users are dropping out. Are they completing a task or are they dropping out? And measure that with error rate. It might be also on time completed on task, because the more time they're completely on a page or a task, they might be a bit lost, and that would be like further research needs to be done. So then from that information, you'll work with, you might be on yourself, or you might be working with other people, like the person himself, working with a front-end developer, and defining what changes need to be done. Then move on to doing some usability testing to find out if your solution works. Again, using the metrics you've defined within the first part of the process and using that, doing usability studies. And usability studies has no number in terms of how many times you want to iterate. So you might want to iterate once and then send it off to beta for it to be out in the real world, and then understanding if there's any bugs or issues that need to be fixed. But as long as you've tested it as many times as you possibly can, make sure you have tested it, that it's kind of goes out to the real world, then it's doing post analysis, what can be changed, because 9 out of 10 times you probably have to make a change and go back to not just not the first stage, but really second stage, and find out a bit more about why it went wrong and why it went right. So that's me rambling on about the life in a UX designer role. So my role kind of encompasses that, because I'm sort of doing that whole process from start to finish. Now I like to move this on slowly to what I'm doing now, which, okay, my role is a product manager role with UX integrated. So my role is half UX, part product management. Now I like to add this extra bit in. So I would like to define my role more like a product designer role, because I've encompassed what I said about the UX designer role, but I also incorporate about product metrics. So I also monitor products in terms of what features need to be changed, and sort of integrating that into the process, and how my, I suppose, UX strategy integrates within the product management side of things. So, and also an additional extra that you probably won't do when you're a UX designer is actually writing up product requirements. So that's looking at defining, which is really, engineers need this. If you're working directly with a back engineer, they need to know how this works. And this is very specific if you want to become a product designer. Define a bit more about what your changes are, understand the flow of how it interacts, how it should or could work, and what shouldn't happen. Define what pages it's going to start on if it's a web-based product, and a bit more about defining about how the product works itself. So that's product designer role. So it's not, this a bit of a short and sweet description, because I've kind of encompassed it within the UX designer role. Now I kind of want to move on to the user research role. Now, again, it's going to be quite short and sweet, because it is, I was not going to say exactly the same, because UX designer does focus on research, but if you're a UX researcher, your role is research. So imagine the designing and wireframing side of things within the UX designer role, that's taken out of normally UX research roles, and it's just pure research. So you'd be doing qualitative research like user interviews, doing card sorting, doing information architecture research, doing ethnographic research, looking at how people react in environments in a natural way. And it's more focused on gathering that information and understanding and helping guide research going forward. You'd also be doing quantitative research. So you might be looking at metrics in terms of web analytics, like Google, what's performing right, what's happening within the funnel, to finding a bit more about where the blockers are. And you might be doing some A/B testing, might be doing some SIG testing or significant testing, defining a bit more about what kind of how your problem is going to solve that issue. You'll be doing testing as well. So yeah, it's more of a research role minus design role. But you can still, there is roles I've seen with UX design roles, with UX research roles, sorry, with design elements in it, but it's not that heavily focused. It will be doing researching type role. We've also got UX writer roles. So this is kind of looking at, I suppose if you've been through, it's not the same as copywriting. I'd like to really highlight that. It's more about understanding how information is displayed on pages. So it can be, I've heard, I'm not sure if this is true, in terms of it's more like an information architecture role. So you're defining how information is defined on a page. So for example, if you look at something like Amazon, how products are categorized. So for example, you won't go and find a chair in, say, the book department, because that's not how you naturally think about where you want to search for a chair. You'd search for furniture. And it's all about defining how, I suppose, products content is structured within a web page to make it easier for users to find, pick stuff, and to guide them through. So you might be doing, again, like maybe doing some testing, you might be doing some tree sorting to find out where the booking from the booking flow is there. Is the information correct? Are the calls to action relevant? Yes, it's a really good, interesting role in terms of defining more of the content on the site. How's that pursued within the page itself? So there's kind of like, I suppose, the starting roles within UX. Oh, I forgot to say, UI designer. That's one of the last roles I want to describe about. So UI role is more focused on, as I said, it's more about design. So looking at how, I suppose, the actual interface is displayed, looking at interactive design, looking at understanding how buttons are displayed, looking at, I suppose, yeah, accessibility as well, how like colors contrasted to make sure that it's easier for users to see. So yes, it's more, that's a more designer role. Now I've kind of gone through this process. I might have blabbered on a little bit, but it was kind of more defining a bit more about where you can go with your UX role. And these are not infinite and defined roles. You can go for use UX in your everyday role, in terms of if you're in say the everyday role. What I mean is it can be actually crossed over with other roles. So for example, go marketing and website design. So you're looking at monitoring, doing digital marketing. You might be understanding a bit more about how reviewing user experience that way, or it can integrate it to one of the roles. But those are the kind of key roles that focus on solely with UX integrated to them. And this is the base level. I'm not talking about specialisms and going up. I'm just going through roles that could be of interest for those of you switching over to UX. Now, I have to put a little pointer out here in terms of a lot of LinkedIn posts are saying about like UX, say, oh, look at my design, rate it. That's not UX. And I have to really like emphasize that is not it, because I've had so many people being put off UX because they think it's that, and it's not. That's more UI design. If you want to go UI design, it's great. But the problem is with that sort of definition, and also that mindset and you minding, oh, that's what it is. It's not. When you look at doing, I suppose, start off with UX, think about common themes, common features, common goals within websites or products that you're looking for, the competitors are going for. It should be all about how you can alter it slightly, and I really emphasize slightly, to make sure that users can get to their end goal effectively and with ease and reduce frustration. Because a lot of these designs are really great graphics, but they're even more frustrating because the question that I would always ask is, what problem are you trying to solve? And why are you trying to redesign a whole site when it's not necessary? A user is going to be, excuse my language, pissed off if you rechange single thing in the website. It's not necessary. The user's already, if they've used it and used it several times, then they're probably going to know how you're going to use the process and how they use it. And little tweaks would just be like, oh, thank you for that. That's helped me with this problem. Okay, then that makes it easier. I can move on to my next task. Whereas if you redesign something, being, oh, I'm struggling with this, oh, the whole system's ruined, and it's not the case. People are going to be like, oh, you redesigned the site. I don't know how to use it now because I'm used to using that, but now you've changed the whole thing, so it's over there. Just give them light changes. And UX is all about iterative changes. Just slowly, small changes to help the user get into a better flow of how they use the system. So that is my rant, but that is also my video for today. So hopefully I've given you some insights in terms of the different types of roles within UX, what actually happens within that sort of role, what can you expect from a day-to-day basis, looking at more the entry levels in terms of what kind of job roles are out there in that sort of area, and also just a little bit of guidance in terms of defining what UX is, to help those of you build that confidence within this area, because it is a massive growing area, and I tell you, it's one of the most rewarding job roles you can get. So on that note, have a great day, and I shall speak to you guys soon.